Well, PL College, how are we doing tonight? Come on. I love it. Well, hey, I am super excited to be back with y'all. I took a couple weeks off platform just to be able to hear some incredible friends bring the word. And so 2 weeks ago, we had our friend Thomas Barr from Passion City Church in Washington, D.C. do an incredible job. And then last week, we had Miss Courtney Googe bring a word. Can y'all give it up for Courtney? It was awesome. And man, if you missed any of those, you can find them. We've got them on YouTube. It's great to check out. But what Courtney did last week was awesome because she kicked off a new series that we're going to spend a couple weeks in talking about the different names of God. And so we're going to talk about the ways that God identifies himself, the way that God reveals himself, the name that he gives us to know him by, and what that means for our lives. But I was thinking about this series, I was thinking about what we're going to talk about tonight, and I realized that there is something special about knowing somebody's name. Like I was thinking back to the first time that I saw my wife. So I'm FaceTiming my little sister on my birthday. My sister's 18 months younger than me. And I'm FaceTiming her on my birthday. And like, I just thought, hey, on a birthday call, like she's going to spend some time on the phone. She's going to talk to me. But she gets on this call this year and she spends like 2 minutes on the phone. And then she's like, all right, I got to go. And I was like, no, like this is my birthday. Like we're going to talk. Like what's going on? And she's like, well, I'm at my friend's birthday. You guys have the same birthday. And so I've got to go. And I was like, who is more important than me on my birthday? And she like turns the camera on FaceTime to show at that time Catherine Corley, who would one day become my wife. And so she goes, this is who I've got to go for. And I was like, oh, dang. Like you go and take me with you. Like that's fine. That's awesome. And so when I saw Kat on FaceTime, I was like, dang, that girl is beautiful, but didn't know her name, didn't know anything about her. My sister just kind of got off the phone. And so when I would go up from West Palm to Tuscaloosa to spend time with my sister, I started to spend more time around this girl, and I realized that her name was, at the time, Catherine Corley. And so like any respectful man, knowing her name meant that I immediately creeped on Instagram. And so creeped on Instagram, and then I sent her a DM. That's descriptive, not prescriptive. Gentlemen, don't do that. But I got her phone number because Snapchat is for perverts. And so I got her phone number, and I started texting her. And so we were texting, we were talking, and what started as me seeing her face led to me learning her name, which ultimately led to me changing her last name, Scoreboard. There you go. I remind her father of that frequently, and he hates it. So it's my favorite thing. And I was even thinking about my kids. So DJ is now 4, Sophia's 19 months, and I remember when they both first started to speak. It was just kind of syllables that they were just kind of like saying over and over again, and it slowly started to evolve where they started to say, Dada. And I was like, that counts. They said my name first. And both of them said my name first, which was incredible and also a bummer because after that, they pretty much said mama for everything else that they would ever want up until this point. But they said my name first, and so it was special, it was cool, it was great for me, and I realized there's something special about knowing a name. And that's the heart behind this series, because what we see when we look in the Bible is that there's a lot of attributes that we see about God. We can look at God and understand that he's a rock, that he's a shepherd, that he's a redeemer. But God's really specific in using about 20 to 25 different names where he goes, hey, I am revealing my identity to my people. And so I want you to know not just what I do, but who I really am. God's names are special because it isn't just about him showing how to address him. It's about him revealing his character. And what you need to understand, when God shares his name, when God reveals his character, what he's doing in that moment is he's revealing his heart. Anytime God reveals his name, he's always revealing his heart. Think about it this way. I don't know the name of every single person that works at a store or a restaurant that I walk into, unless it's Chipotle, and then I know them all and they're invited to Christmas at my house. But normal stores, when you walk in, you don't know the guy that works at AutoZone. You don't know the person that works at Kroger. Why? Because it's transactional. You're just there to get something. You go in, you get something, and you get out. Knowing someone's name moves from something being transactional to something being relational. To reveal a name means that there is a desire to know you. And so the very fact that an all-powerful God is revealing the depths of who he is by telling us his name reveals a desire to know us and be known by us. And that's what we're going to see in the passage that we're studying today. We're going to look in Exodus 3 as God reveals another name that we can know him by and be known by in this relationship with him. And if you're unfamiliar with the book of Exodus, where we're going to kind of pick up in the story is we're learning about a guy named Moses. And Moses was a guy he was an Israelite. He was born to the people of Israel, but at that time, all of the Israelites were slaves in the land of Egypt. They'd been slaves for about 400 years, and it was a harsh slavery. And so Moses is born, and he's actually born into a time where Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, has just said, hey, I want to kill all firstborn males of all the Israelites. And so this massive genocide happens, and yet through God's sovereignty, Moses isn't just saved from death, he's actually delivered and ends up being raised in Pharaoh's household. So he gets all of the privilege, all of the blessing of being raised in that household. And yet, Moses gets to a point where he ends up actually killing a guy and goes on the run. And so he's in exile out in the desert, and he's kind of just wandering around. And yet in that moment, while in exile, God seeks out a man that never knew him, and God chooses to reveal himself to him in a real and personal way. We're going to see this story, how it unfolds, but the last verse of what we're going to study is kind of encapsulating the heart of God in this passage, and it's Exodus 3:16, and God is speaking, and he says, now go call together all the elders of Israel and tell them Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me. The name that we are going to learn about tonight, the name of God that he is wanting to reveal to us is the name Yahweh. And Yahweh is kind of a combination of Hebrew letters, but the best translation of that word, the best translation of the name Yahweh for us to know God by is translated to I am. If you see the name Yahweh in the Bible, it just means I am. It's God saying, I am. As some translations say, it's I am who I am, or some even say, I am who will be. But in all of those, what you have to understand is that when God reveals himself with this name is meant to be the covenantal God, or the covenantal name between God and his people. God's going, hey, no one else can call me this name but my people. And when they use this name, it is the name that shows that I am theirs and they are mine. It's used over 7,000 times in the Old Testament. But here's the best part about the name that God reveals to Moses and the people of Israel. The word Yahweh, the name Yahweh, a lot of scholars think God used that word to mimic the sound of an inhale or an exhale. Think about when you breathe in and you breathe out. Every time you do it, you are saying the covenantal name of God. The very name Yahweh shows that God wants to be a part of your every breath, your every word, your every prayer. It shows a desire from a God who wants to reveal himself. God is saying that Yahweh, I am, is revealing myself to you. And the more we know about God, the more we know and grow in how he made us, and the more our lives become worship to a God that is revealing himself. And so that's what we're going to see tonight. Is that Yahweh is speaking into Moses' life, and he's going, hey, you had no idea who I was, you had no idea what I want to do, but I am revealing myself so that you can know me and I can know you, and we can begin to journey together and flourish in the life of what it looks like to be in a covenant relationship with Yahweh. And there's things that God's name reveal in this story that show us his character. And if you're taking notes tonight, the first thing that you can understand and see that Yahweh is revealing is he's saying, hey, the name Yahweh means I am. And God is saying to Moses, hey, I am choosing you. I'm choosing you. I remember when I was playing JV soccer in high school, I was playing in Bradenton, Florida, and to say I was playing soccer is generous because I sucked. But I suck so bad, like y'all know this. My two positions that I most frequently found myself playing in JV soccer were right bench or left out. Like it was that bad. Like I couldn't get start time if I paid for it. And so I was constantly sitting on the bench, but I wasn't like watching the game when I was sitting on the bench. I was staring at my coach the entire time. And I was staring at him like a lost puppy at a shelter that just wanted someone to adopt him. And I'm like, surely if I stare at this man long enough, he will feel the desire in my soul that I want to be on that field, and I will give it everything I have, and I will put my body on the line, and they will make a Disney Channel original movie about the heart that I brought to this team in JV soccer in Bradenton, Florida. And so my coach never looked at me, and that was weird for both of us. But here's what I learned about that moment. The deepest desire in the heart of every human being is to be chosen. We all long to be chosen. We want someone to see us, to desire us, to want us. The great thing about that desire is that's not an accidental input into our systems. God created us that way. And God created us with a desire to want to be chosen because ultimately God is revealing, hey, I'm going to choose you. We see this in Moses' story. Exodus 3:1-6 says, one day Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. This is amazing, Moses said to himself. Why isn't this bush burning up? And so like any good man, he sees something on fire and he goes, I must go see it. And so he walks towards it. And when the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the bush and said, Moses, Moses. Here I am, Moses replied. And the Lord warned him, don't come any closer. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I'm the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. If you've grown up in church, you've probably heard this story before. Like God reveals himself in a burning bush and talks to Moses. And for me, I was always like, that's really cool. I don't really understand the significance of it, but it's still really cool. And then I started to study this passage. Y'all, can I tell you, this is one of the coolest things I've read in a long time. God revealing himself in a burning bush had so much power and significance. Think about it this way. Fire and wood don't really have good long-term relationships. Right? Like if you take some fire and you take some wood, eventually the fire is always going to consume the wood. The purity of the fire is always going to overtake the impurity of the wood. And God is revealing himself to Moses and he's going, I'm the fire and you are the bush. And in any other situation, by any other design, I should completely consume you. I am an all-knowing, all-powerful, ever-present, pure, holy, and righteous God, and you are a broken, sinful man. You shouldn't be able to even stand in my presence. And yet God, through the illustration of a burning bush, goes, Moses, I see you, and it should not exist. It should not make sense. It should not happen, but I choose you. And I choose to dwell with you. God's saying the same thing to me and you today. We could never approach God. He's too perfect. He's too pure. He's too holy. And yet God desires us. He chooses us. But here's the great part about it. It's not based on our substance. Our substance, like wood in a normal fire, is inadequate. God doesn't choose us based on our substance. He chooses us based on his character. We could not be good enough. We could not bridge the gap. And God goes, your substance in and of itself is inadequate, but my character, who I am, the thing that defines me is a God who loves you and a God who chooses you regardless of the inadequacy of your substance. And y'all need to understand this tonight. Like, the God of the universe looks at you and he goes, man, I have seen every single sin. I've seen every single mistake. I've seen every single broken thought. I've seen every single time you've lost your temper. He looks at every single thing that makes you broken and he goes, I still choose you every day. And I want to dwell with you. I don't want fire and bush to be separate and kind of coexist in distance. He goes, I want to dwell on you and in you. I choose you. Man, what a blessing to hear that God chooses us, but God looks at us in Exodus 3 and he goes, not only do I want to choose you, not only am I choosing you, God also says, hey, my name Yahweh, my name I am means not only that I am choosing you, he also says, I am working. I'm doing something. I'm up to something. Exodus 3, 7 through 10 says, Then the Lord told him, I've certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. Remember, they're living in slavery. He says, I've heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I'm aware of their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey, a land where the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of my people Israel has reached me. I've seen how harshly the Egyptians treat them. Now go, for I'm sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. Here's what God's showing us in Exodus 3. It's that God is not as passive in our lives as we like to think that he is. I think sometimes we think that we're doing our own things in our life, and on good days and bad days, God's sitting up there on some like bedazzled golden throne going like, that's a bummer. That's awesome. Good for you. Bad for you. Here's some rain. And we think that he's just kind of like passively watching our lives. And yet God is speaking in Exodus 3, and he goes, I am not a passive observer. I am active in the lives of my people. God's going, I'm not just seeing this, I'm present. And I think he's saying he's present in a couple different ways. I think in Exodus 3, God's showing us that he is present in our pain. Verse 7 says, Then the Lord told him, I've certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries of distress because of the harsh slave drivers. And yes, I'm aware of their suffering. God says, I see it. I hear it, and I'm aware of it. And this isn't just like a cognitive awareness. This is an emotional, like, man, this breaks my heart too. I feel the pain that you are feeling. And we're going to talk more about this next week, but you need to understand something tonight, that the defining characteristic of God is that he is actively involved in your moments of pain. He doesn't see you crying and go, oh, ugly cry, I'm out. He is actively sitting with you in it. Think about the name of Yahweh. That breathe in, breathe out. And then think about the last breath of that family member that you knew that passed away too soon. In that breath, Yahweh was there. Think about that gasp you take when you are sobbing and you're just trying to catch your breath. That moment, Yahweh's on your breath. Think about the inhaling you try to do when you're trying just to control your identity and get your hands to stop shaking. Yahweh's present in that moment. Think about the exhale that you do out of frustration when that person has hurt you again, has disregarded boundaries, has crossed lines. Yahweh's there. The psalmist talks about this way in Psalm 56:8. He says, God, you keep track of all my sorrows. You've collected all my tears in your bottle. You've recorded each one in your book. God is aware, God is present, and God is working. I think that's why that worship song where we go, even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel it, you're working. You're working. You never stop working. There's a reason that that song hits different. And it's because to a certain degree, whether or not we're a fan of God in that moment, we can agree with the fact that, man, like, God really is working in our pain. But the good thing is that God is not only present and working in our pain, God is also present in his promises. And you see this in the beginning of verse 8. It says, So I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. Y'all are about to hear my excited voice because I love this stuff. Okay. In ancient Near Eastern mythology, which we are all familiar with, what you see is that all of these different people groups had their own gods. They had gods that they believed in. He talks about the Egyptians. We know a lot about Egyptian gods. He talks about the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Jebusites. All of these different people groups, all of these different tribes had different gods that they would worship. But the universal theme about every single group, no matter what gods they worshiped, was that they worshiped their gods because their gods, they believed, were the ones who sustained things. They kept the show on the road. They were the ones who kept it raining when it was supposed to rain. They were the ones who kept seasons changing when they were supposed to change. Their gods were the ones that kept things going. Do you want to know the difference of Yahweh from every other God that was ever worshipped in any bit of creation? It's because every other God that was worshipped for sustaining things. Yahweh was not just worshipped for sustaining things, he was worshipped for doing new things. No other God could do what Yahweh did. They could worship a God for making it rain, but no other God could be transformative and redemptive and do a new thing like Yahweh could. And he says this to the Israelites. He goes, hey, Moses, I want you to tell my people that I'm not just going to make the Egyptians play nice. Like, I'm not just going to rezone like a nice little gated community in Egypt so that they can kind of be there. He goes, I'm doing something new. Unlike anything you've ever seen. I'm not just going to like make slavery tolerable for them. I'm going to take an entire nation out of slavery, and I'm going to give them more blessing and more promise and more hope and more heritage than they could have ever done on their own. What other God has done that? It's the identity of the God of the Old Testament. If you look at Isaiah 43:19, God's speaking, and I want you to picture this as a God who's like excited when he says this. He goes, for I'm about to do something new. He's like, don't you see it? I've already begun. Don't you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in a dry wasteland. God is going, hey, I'm on the move. And you ain't seen this trick before because there are wastelands in your life. There are things in your life where you go, man, I can't ever get through this. If you've ever been in the woods before, you've been out hunting, and you hit just like a briar patch, you're like, I'm not touching that. God's going, hey, think about that in your life. Think about the thing that you don't know how to navigate, you don't know how to get through, and he's going, you know what? I will make a clear and present path for you. He says, not only am I doing that, he says, I'm going to do rivers in the wasteland. Is there something in your life that you think is dead? You got a relationship with a family member that you feel like is long gone. You got a hope or a dream that you feel like is destroyed or deferred. God goes, hey, I am breathing life into this situation. I am creating rivers in a wasteland. And it is not going to be a desert. It is going to be a place of flourishing and hope and redemption because I'm doing something new. That's God's identity in the Old Testament, and it's God's identity in the New Testament. Because Jesus looks at us and he goes, hey, you've got something called sin. And the thing about Jesus is he goes, hey, you're dead in your sin. And he doesn't try to make us better. You can't make a dead thing better. It either has to stay dead or it needs a resurrection. And Jesus goes, I'm not trying to make you better. I'm trying to make you new. And I want to bring you from death to life in me. Jesus goes, hey, resurrection isn't a one-time thing I did on an Easter Sunday. It is something I can do in every moment of every minute of every single day, and I can do it for your spiritual life, but I can also do it in your hopes and your dreams and your prayers and your goals and your identity. I can redeem, I can restore, I can resurrect, and you go, well, God, I've never seen you do that before. And he goes, good. Let me show you I can do it now. It's like, that's why Paul in Ephesians 3:20, almost in this like praise break in the middle of this letter that he's writing to the church in Ephesus, he stops and he goes, now all glory to God, who is able through the mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or imagine. God's on the move in your relationship, in your dream, in your redemption. Think about it this way. On your best day, your most creative, like you're just like firing and you're like, okay, my best dream for my life or what I think God can do, like the greatest picture I could ever imagine, God goes, man, that is a drop in the ocean of what I can actually do. God goes, you want to see something new in your life? Trust the one who breathed stars into creation. That's the God who wants to do something new in your life. That's the God who says, I'm working in your life. I remember when Catherine and I started dating. Well, let me back up before that because this is even more fun to add. When I was doing my master's degree, I was wanted to go into ministry, and so I was doing my master's degree, and I was garbage. Like, I'm not smart, and I was in a class with a lot of very, very smart people. but nobody in our cohort for our master's program had ever done a master's thesis. And so genuinely, y'all, I thought it would be hysterical if the village idiot did it first. And so I was like, I'm going to write a master's thesis before anyone else. And I did it. And it was terrible. But number one, doesn't matter. And I remember I wrote my master's thesis, I kid you not, living in West Palm Beach, Florida. I knew nothing about Oxford. I knew nothing about Ole Miss. My family were Alabama fans. Like, you guys were just kind of a blip on the schedule. And so I got better. Okay, hotty toddy, I'm with you. But I remember sitting there, and I wanted to do college ministry, and so I was like, I'm going to write a master's thesis and do a study around what would it look like for a college ministry with college students who are genuinely on fire for the Lord. What would the impact of that ministry be in the community? And so if there were college students that gathered together to lift up the name of Jesus and really pursue him, would that reduce the amount of DUIs? Would that reduce the amount of arrests? Would it actually make the town that group of college students is in flourish because of the goodness of God? And I did case studies, and Oxford was not one of them. Fast forward to like 2016, my wife and I meet, and we start dating, and we're dating long distance. I'm in West Palm, she's in Tuscaloosa, and she asked a really good question after the first date. She goes, hey, where do you see yourself going in life? Which is a fair and right question to ask. And so I was like, I'd never really thought about it before. So I said, well, I know I want to do college ministry because that's when God changed my life. I know I want to be in the South because everywhere else sucks. And I know I want to be in I want to be in the darkest place I can find. And I want to be the most broken place I can find. And so I kid you not, 2016, I Googled #1 party school in the South. Hotty toddy. And so Oxford, Mississippi came up. I didn't know anything about Oxford, didn't know anything about Pine Lake. I remember Googling churches, and I didn't see Pine Lake on the website, like on the Google search. And so I thought, okay, this may be a cool place to like plan a campus or a church one day. And so I walked into my prayer closet in West Palm Beach, and I wrote Oxford, Mississippi on my prayer board and circled it 7 times and thought, hey, maybe we'll just plant a church there one day, or like, I don't know, like whatever. And no concept. Do y'all realize that I am now living in something that makes my master's thesis look like it was done in crayon? That's the goodness of God. That's the goodness of a God who goes, I am working and I am doing something new, and it's better than you could ever ask or imagine. Can I just tell y'all, if you're a follower of Jesus and you go, well, I just feel like following Jesus is boring. Like, I'm a Christian, but like it's just kind of boring. It's the same old, same old. Can I just challenge y'all for a second? There should be no boring days for a follower of Jesus. There are no boring days for a follower of Jesus who is willing to be led by the Spirit of God for the glory of the Father. If you are a follower of Jesus, you should never be bored, because our lives should be consumed with the fact that the Holy Spirit is moving, and we shouldn't be like trying to create things or do things on our own. We have the opportunity and the privilege to go. We serve a God who has revealed himself, and his name shows us that he is always doing something new. And so we're not trying to find something to start up. We're looking where his Spirit is moving, and we're just joining him in that. And that's never boring. It's awesome. And you get to see opportunity. I remember I was talking to a guy last week, and he was talking about the fact that, like, in Oxford, like, what would it look like to take some of the things that we as Christians try to avoid or just think is mundane and actually see them as opportunities for the Holy Spirit to move and make them sacred? He was like, man, what would that look like if, like, the things in Oxford that we look at and we're like, oh, I'm just going to work, or like, oh, I'm just, I'm in a fraternity or sorority, and so I'm just going and I'm just like kind of trying not to mess up. He said, what if we looked at those as things that were actually opportunities for the Holy Spirit to move and do something and take ground? Like, what if Romans 8:11 is actually true, that the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead now lives in us? What would that mean? Would we walk into work and look at it as something just to get done so we can get a paycheck? Or would we look at it as a place to continue to tell people about a God that has saved us and redeemed us? Would we look at our team and sorority and fraternity through the lens of judgment of going, man, I can't believe they do that. I can't believe they're still doing that stuff. I can't believe they're that jacked up. Or would we look at it as an opportunity for revival? Would we look at life as something just to get through and make our way through, or as an opportunity for God to do something new and sacred? You got to start to ask yourself questions like that. And here's the reality. If you're going, man, I don't really know if that's my thing, and I'm just a follower, like I'm a Christian, but I feel like life is boring. If your life hasn't changed after an encounter with a living God, chances are you probably haven't had a real encounter with a life-changing God. If you're sitting here and you're going, man, being a Christian is boring, and being a Christian is just the same old thing over, and I go to Pine Lake, and it just is what it is, and that's not Jesus. That's not Yahweh. That's not the God who makes rivers in a wasteland. That's a sham. And you should get your money back, because the God of this Bible is going, I'm doing something new. He's going, I'm choosing you. I'm working. And not only that, he says, I am with you. Yahweh says, I am with you. Exodus 3:11-15. Moses hears all this and he begins to protest in front of God. He goes, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? And God answers, I will be with you, and this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you've brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this very mountain. But Moses protested again. If I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they'll ask me, what's his name? But then what should I tell them? And God replied to Moses, I am who I am, Yahweh. Say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. Here's the thing that Moses learned very quickly about Yahweh. When you have an encounter with God, you cannot stay where you are. When you have an encounter with a living God who is revealing himself to us, you cannot stay where you are. God is always going to move you into something deeper. And that's what he's doing with Moses. God's revelation of his character wasn't just for Moses, it was for his people too. God's going, Moses, I'm revealing myself to you so I can do something in you, but also so I can do something through you. And it's the same thing for us. God's going, hey, I want to do something in you, but I also want to work through you. I've got something more for your life. And Moses hears all this, and here's the incredible plan of how God wants to redeem people and do all this stuff, and immediately he panics. Like, he just starts freaking out, and he starts to do these different things to try and get out of what God's calling him to. And he starts out by these kind of statements in verse 11 where it's like a who am I statement. It's like, God, it's me. Like, who am I? Really? Like, there's some better people that I'm sure you could use. And what Moses is doing in that moment is he's actually exercising false humility to try and get himself out of something. And what we see in Moses' story is sometimes disobedience looks like really convincing excuses. Sometimes us being disobedient to God is going, God, like, I mean, come on. It's me. Like, let's be honest. And we are really good at talking ourselves out of obedience to God. And we say things like, I can't talk to my teammates about Jesus because it could affect my team culture. You're darn right it could. But maybe not in the way that you're thinking. We go, man, I don't want to live differently in my fraternity because if I don't drink, my friends are just going to think that I'm being judgmental. And God, I don't want that. Or we say, man, I can't put boundaries in place with my boyfriend and my girlfriend because we've already done stuff, and if all of a sudden if I go, I don't want to do that anymore, they're going to think that I'm being hypocritical. And we start to kind of talk ourselves out of things with really convincing excuses that are actually disobedience. Or we do another thing that I find myself doing all the time. We don't want to be obedient, not because of what God is calling us to, but because we get worried about the details that are 5 or 6 steps down the road. God calls him, and Moses immediately goes, well, God, if I go to the people, and if I do this, and like, if they ask me this, God, what should I say? And Moses is worried about the details of later, not the obedience of now. And he goes, God, I can't be obedient now because what if they do all this stuff later? And God's going, hey, stop focusing on that and listen to my voice right now. And here's the greatest indicator that will let you know if you're focused on worrying about the details of later and not the obedience of now. Moses uses one of the most lethal phrases in our faith life when he's faced with this. He goes, God, what if? God, what if they do this? What if they do this? Can I just tell y'all, what if is a statement of fear. It is never a statement of faith. If you feel like God is telling you to do something and your first response is to say, well, God, what if? That's a fearful reaction. And a fearful reaction is never something that God is calling us into. And what God is trying to help Moses understand is something that we all need. God wanted Moses to take his focus off the how and focus on the who. We get so concerned with having the resources that we think we need to be obedient that we forget that God is actually all sufficient for everything that he's calling us to. Like, think about this. God is literally telling Moses, hey, I want you, a murderer, a guy who's not really an Israelite because you kind of lived a posh life in the kingdom, like the palace of the guy who committed genocide on your people. I want you to deliver an entire nation out of slavery from the most powerful kingdom on the world and take them into something that is better than anything they could imagine. And God does not give Moses a team. He doesn't give him tools. He doesn't give him ChatGPT 3,000 years in advance to help him solve some things. All he gives him is his identity and his name. But God's name and his identity are his credibility. The only tool that God gave Moses was a deeper understanding of who God was. God's name and his identity are his credibility. God is saying, hey, Moses, I worked in the life of Abraham, I worked in the life of Isaac, I worked in the life of Jacob, and if I did miracles for them, I can do it for you too. And what God is saying to Moses and what God is saying to us is he's going, hey, my faithfulness in the past is what you need for the faith now. Don't worry about the future. Look back and see the miracles that I've done. And let that be the credibility to go, hey, I can have faith to trust God to take that next step. And the moment that you do that, it starts to build something in you. But what God is showing to Moses and what he ultimately wants us to understand is this. God looked at Moses and he goes, Moses, I want to be real with you. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about me doing something in you and doing something through you. And God's looking at you tonight, and if you feel like God's calling you to be obedient to something, but you're nervous about the details or what it's going to look like or how you're going to, God's going, it's not about you. Sorry, we're not that important. God's going, it's what I want to do in you, and it's what I want to do through you. The Apostle Paul, as he's struggling in his ministry, he said, man, I have something that I feel like it's like a thorn in my flesh. And he doesn't elaborate on what it is, but he's constantly going to God, going, God, I need you to take this away. And God goes, I'm not going to do it. And he goes, God, I need you to take this away. And God goes, I'm not going to do it. And ultimately, in 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul says, each time God said to me, my grace is sufficient. It's all you need. My power works best in weakness. So Paul said, I am now glad to boast about my weakness so that the power of Christ can work through me. God's going, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all together. You don't need to have the answers or the plan. If I am calling you to it, I will see you through it. Just trust that I am with you. And if the idea of God choosing you, if the idea of Yahweh working, if the idea of Yahweh being with you is not enough, can I tell you something that's really, really cool in this? Fast forward to the New Testament. Jesus is on the scene and he's doing ministry and he's going around and he's healing people, he's doing works, and he gets to this kind of sea and he's with his disciples. He says, hey, I want you guys to sail out on boats and I'll meet up with you later. And so the disciples get in the boats, they start sailing, and a storm rolls in, and then nighttime pops up, and so they're in the dark in a storm, and they start freaking out. They're like, we're going to die. So Jesus, being Jesus, does what Jesus does, just starts walking on water. And so the disciples now think they're going to drown, and then they see what they think is a ghost, and so they're like, we're going to drown and be haunted by ghosts. This is the worst day ever. And so they start freaking out. And I love how Mark captures this in Mark 6:50. It says, they were all terrified when they saw him, but Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage. I am here. When Jesus says, I am here, he's not just speaking about presently being in that moment. He's saying, I am is here. He's saying, Yahweh is here. Jesus is affirming his divinity. He's going, I'm not just some man. I am the God who has always been. I am who I am. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm the God of Moses. I'm the God of you in the boat right now. And I'm the God of every single person in this room in Oxford tonight. And what God is showing us is that his name has not changed. And if his name has not changed, then neither has his character. And the same God that saw the pain of the people in Egypt, the same God that chose Moses, the same God that saw the panic of the disciples in the boat, looks at you tonight. And he goes, hey, for every single person in this room, there is an element of my character that I'm drawing you into a deeper level of understanding tonight. And it's not to be informational so that you can understand more about God. It's about to be transformational so that you leave here different. And so for some of y'all tonight, you need to understand that God's choosing you. That Yahweh looks at you and he goes, man, when every friend group acts like they could care less if you lived or died, when your parents make it very clear that you are not the favorite sibling, when you feel like in any relationship you have to do something to earn the affection of the person that you're talking to or dating, God goes, I'm different. I'm not like other things. I am choosing you. And it shouldn't even exist. It shouldn't even be possible, but that's how much I love you, to make a way through impossibilities, to let you know that I'm choosing you. Some of y'all need to hear tonight that God's working because you're in the middle of pain and you go, man, I can't get my head above water and I feel like I'm all alone in this. And God goes, I see you and I am present. Some of you are sitting here tonight and you're going, I need to see that God's working in a promise because I feel like I am on my last dollar. And I don't mean like financially. I mean you're just feeling like I got nothing else to give. And God goes, I got a promise. I'm going to do something new. Something better than you thought. And some of you just need to hear tonight and know tonight that God is with you. That if he's calling you to it, he will see you through it. There's a great saying that people have said in churches for a long time, that God does not equip the called. No, I'm going to mess that up. God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. Meaning you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have it figured out. You just have to trust that he's with you. And so with y'all's heads bowed and eyes closed, here's what I want to challenge y'all with tonight. This is that point in the service, if you're like me, sometimes I just close my eyes and my brain just kind of wanders. But every single one of us tonight has a response. For some of us, God's going, hey, I want you just to receive my love. For some of us, God's going, hey, I want you to trust me with your plans, with your future. For some of us tonight, you just need to hear that God loves you and he's revealing himself to you. And you're sitting in this room tonight. I believe there are people in this room who go, man, I go to church and I will tell people that I'm a Christian, but I am not actually a follower of Jesus. And you want something more tonight. Can I tell you that a relationship with Jesus is not something you have to earn. It's not something you have to strive for. You don't have to be good enough to come into church to get it. Romans 10:9 says, if you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, you will be saved. And so for some of you tonight, it may be turning to the person next to you who's a friend and asking them for prayer. It may be praying with some of our friends up front, but it may just be going, God, I want to surrender. I don't want to do this on my own anymore. And in an instant, you receive the fullness of a God who has been on every breath that has come through your lips before you even knew he existed. So God, I just pray for the people in the room right now that need that. God, I pray for the ones who feel rejected. God, I pray that they leave here feeling chosen. God, I pray for the ones who feel unseen in their pain or the waiting for a promise. God, I pray that you show them that you're doing something new. And God, I pray for the ones who are being called to a deeper level of obedience, maybe with an opportunity or some influence. God, I pray that you show them that you are with them in the midst of that. And that the result is a group of people who leave here today changed, but we're changed not just because you did something through us, but because we understand the weight and the glory and the joy of what you want to do through us. So God, we thank you for this time, for all this in your Son's name and for his glory. Amen. Will you all stand and worship with us?